Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5 Red Lights and our top 3 performers from the 70th anniversary Formula One Grand Prix held at Silverstone at the weekend. Now, let's dive on into our third placed driver for this week, and we're going to go with Alexander Albon. Bouncing back from a tricky weekend at the British Grand Prix, qualified only ninth in an interesting qualifying session where everyone was on the mediums because the tyres were a step softer. Made a decent start, ran behind Gasly and Norris, and an early stop from Red Bull gave him a bit of clear air. And this is where his race really came alive. The overtake on Kimi Raikkonen really does put him in this top three kind of on its own, but the way his race then came together after that obviously helps him. But what an amazing overtake that was. Gets the run down the old national pit straight out of Luffield through Woodcote. He's almost on the grass as they go for the entry into Copse. He has to sort of back out of it. But even though he's on the outside, it's an amazing bit of car control to balance the car through the corner, maintaining enough speed to pin Raikkonen to the inside and still make the move stick as he runs wide on the curbs on the exit of the corner. And that's a corner taken flat out 8th gear. Ballsy stuff is how I can describe that. That was sensational. And he followed it up with another excellent overtake on Gasly, this time through Luffield corner, again on the outside. Another corner where you can get squeezed out on the exit. Unlike Copse, there's a gravel trap. Copse, you have the big runoff area because of the high-speed nature of it. And got the move done on the outside and cracked on from there. Took Norris and Stroll as well later on in the race, putting together a really nice two-stop strategy and bagging himself 5th place in the end. Just think where he could have been had he qualified slightly better. He could have potentially challenged for a podium, and at worst, he'd have probably finished ahead of Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. And talking of Charles Leclerc, he is our 2nd place driver on our top 3 performers this week. He was the leading car managing to pull off a one-stop strategy, and that it was almost unthinkable with the tyres going a step softer that anyone would be able to even consider a one-stop strategy. But again, they ran that low downforce setup, which served them so well last week and put Leclerc on the podium once Bottas had his tyre failure. And it just seemed to handle so well for him and come together. And it was completely the opposite for Sebastian Vettel, who was all at sea and being critical on the radio. And you heard nothing from Charles. Obviously, this is a man who's very at peace with himself, very comfortable in his environment. And Seb is quite the opposite. He's fighting for his future and almost trying to prove a point. Leclerc has got the air of a man very comfortable where he is, even though the car is less comfortable. He ran close to the leaders because of that one stop, and they were doing the 2-stop, which meant they obviously fell back towards him. He did think he could get the podium, but when he pushed, the tyres started to overheat and go off, and he decided, okay, no, let's not bother with that. We'll just keep the tyres in a good condition and bring it home. 12 points for 4th place with a bit of a dog of a car is not to be turned down at all. So 4th place for Leclerc on the road and 2nd place in the 5 Red Lights top 3 performers. 1st place, who else? Max Verstappen. Did anybody see this coming? I, for one, thought Mercedes are going to pitch up again. They're going to have a big advantage in qualifying, and they did, over a second to the next car, which was Hülkenberg. And after the first couple of laps, I'm thinking, they might just waltz away with this. And it was fairly obvious that Verstappen was going to get track position, but I didn't think he'd have the pace to hang on to it, let alone push the Mercedes in the way that he did in the opening stint. It was an incredible stint. And even as they pitted for tyres on lap 14 and 15, he was still matching them while the Mercedes are on new tyres and Verstappen's on old tyres. His management of the tyres was brilliant, and it allowed him to have this insane pace. And it's all down to his own clever strategy call on the Saturday. So as I say again, the tyres were a step softer. So this week's hard was last week's medium, which they all qualified on last week. So at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, Verstappen decided, okay, hard tyres it is to get through Q2, and it put him in prime position in the race. He managed to qualify fourth on the grid, behind the two Mercs and the almost said Force India. It's a Racing Point and not a Mercedes, not a pink one. A good start gets him into third. Serious race pace, and even though the team were telling him to back off, he said, "No, I'm not driving like a grandma." And off he went. He pressurized the Mercedes. He took the race to them, and in the heat, the Mercedes kind of melted, just like their tires. They blistered theirs, they damaged them, and Verstappen's, every time you went on board with him, they were in good condition. They had none of the blisters. They were looking after the tires, and Red Bull went with the slightly lower downforce approach that Ferrari had sort of pioneered the week before, and it benefited them. He looked after the tires brilliantly. He wasn't having to overdrive the car to stay in touch. He wasn't having to chase the lap time. There was none of that fiery aggression that we've come to see from Max when things aren't quite going his way over the last few weeks. But then he has this spare mental capacity, a little bit like Schumacher, sometimes a little bit like Hamilton. And this is something that all the greats have. They just have this extra capacity to consider what's going on around them. Alonso is another one. He's the radio messages where he's driving around Monza and he's more concerned about where Jolyon Palmer is and what's happened to him than the actual result. And Verstappen demonstrated this also over the radio. And this is probably the only way you can really see that insight. And at the end of the race, the last lap, he's asking his team, did they remember to hydrate? Did they remember to sanitize? Just that extra capacity. It shows you it's a mark of a potential great. I'm not going to call him a great yet because he's still at the very beginning of his career. He's not, in the grand scheme of things, achieved anything yet. He took his 9th race win. Well done. But we expect more from him and he expects more from himself. He's expecting multiple world championships with the skill and the talent that he's got. And he demonstrated all of that, winning the 70th anniversary Formula One Grand Prix, held at Silverstone. Cracking effort from him. So that is the top 3 performers from this weekend's 70th anniversary Grand Prix from the 5 red lights. So we've got Alexander Albon in 3rd place, Charles Leclerc in 2nd place, and race winner Max Verstappen takes our top spot. Leave a like, that would help out the channel immensely. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below. Tell us why you think Max Verstappen was the #1 performer of the weekend. Tell us if you thought someone else was the #1 performer of the weekend. We would love to hear it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.